Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another installment of In Focus. Now, you don't have to have your headphones on if you don't want. Sometimes it's easy because you isolate your voice and everything, but you don't have to have the headphones on. We have the monitor speakers. Our first episode for the fall 2022 brings us artist Virginia Sperry. And Virginia, welcome to Hood, welcome to Blazer Radio, welcome to the Hood Multimedia Suite up here on the third floor of Rosenstock. Hope your summer's going well.
Thank you.
There you go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go back because a lot of people, I think it's good that people get to know you and find out where your inspiration comes from. So let's start where you grew up. So where did you grow up? Kind of, how did you stumble upon art? Did you stumble upon it? Did it find you? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, I grew up in Connecticut, the very northwest corner, which is a very small town of 3,000 people. But we're about 2 hours north of New York City, and a lot of arts people lived in our town and either commuted down to New York or worked in the private schools that were near us. And both my parents were in the arts. My mother was an artist, but she also got an undergraduate degree in theater. Oh. And my dad was a musician, and he played the organ in our church every Sunday.
What kind of art does your mom do?
Whatever. You know what? She was kind of like Martha Stewart before Martha Stewart was Martha Stewart.
She made things overly complicated? That should be very, very easy to do?
She used whatever was there. It could be alphabet pasta. Okay. It could be yarn. It could be fabric. It could be clay. It could be, she would save the tops of, and I'm dating myself on this one, the tops of milk cartons, not milk cartons, but glass milk containers, and use them for watercolors instead of having a dish for watercolors. That was,
That's very inventive.
It was incredibly inventive.
Unless you want to, return your milk carton and...
You didn't have to have that on it. You could still return the glass, So in any case, we were not allowed in her quote unquote back room, which was her studio. And we definitely were not allowed to touch her box of 64 crayons, which was, mean. But I now have my own, so it's okay.
I was going to say, did you finally get your own at some point?
Absolutely.
Was it like ninth year Christmas, you finally got your 64 instead of the 16?
Something like that. Yes, we had to use the broken ones, before then.
What was your favorite color out of the 64? Like what one got whittled down the quickest? Do you remember?
Well, if you've seen my installation, you might notice that I like all colors.
Yeah.
But I think probably back then blues were used quite a lot. I don't remember, really. Just whatever was there.
Yeah, okay. I always just like to ask those kind of off-the-wall questions.
I know.
So growing up, elementary school, middle school, high school, were you very much into art and creating? Or was that something that came later?
Creating was something that I just did because when I would go say to Mom, I'm bored, she would hand me a piece of paper and, some markers or whatever. And so it was something that I did, but it wasn't my focus. I was actually into dance back then.
Okay.
I was a dancer. And so I took many dance classes in the little town. There weren't a whole lot, but, I took what was there. And that was going to be what I was when I grew up, was a dancer. That didn't quite work out the way I had anticipated. So it wasn't really until after I got my master's degree that I started doing art first as an outlet and then as a full-time gig.
Okay. Where did you go to college and get your master's?
Okay, so I went to Skidmore.
My brother-in-law went to Skidmore.
Uh-huh. What year was he in?
Oh, God, when did John graduate? He probably... 90 something.
Okay. He's younger.
He's young. He's
Yeah.
not 50 yet.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to tell you the year that I graduated, but in any
I
case,
won't ask
it was a while ago. And actually, I graduated with a degree in theater. That's another long story. Anyway, and then I took a couple of years off, and then I got my master's at Goucher in dance movement therapy.
Okay, so Goucher right down the road here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how did you go from Connecticut to Skidmore to outside Baltimore? How did that?
How long do we have?
Give me the Cliff Notes.
The Cliff Notes. Navy took me from Saratoga. Well, actually, I'll add one little thing. I went from Saratoga Springs to New York City
Okay.
and danced with the Martha Graham School.
Oh, good for you.
For a year, and realized that I did not have it in me to be a professional dancer. You have to really be committed to pain and
Yeah.
to selling yourself as a dancer. And I wasn't.
I have heard that.
Yeah.
That you're basically in constant pain all the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And if you're not, you're doing something wrong.
Yes.
And that's the way it is.
And even if you're not doing something right, you're in pain because of it. So it's
Yeah.
pain no matter what. Yes, that is true. I don't like pain. So I then moved down to South Carolina. This was the couple of years I took off, was the Navy had taken my boyfriend / fiance to Charleston. And so I went there and we got married and lived there for 3 years.
Okay.
And then I came back to this area and went to Goucher. And so that's when I did the dance therapy thing, which was sort of using dance, but it's more psychotherapy. It's a means of healing using movement and dance.
Okay.
So
Very cool. So, all right. So going from that, how did you make that transition to the cool thing that is now over in our Tatum Gallery?
yeah, it was a little bit of serendipity, actually.
And like, is this like, did you automatically just go, oh, I'm going to somehow find a way to use, fabrics?
No.
How did that all come about? Because I have a feeling there's like a pathway.
There's a pathway again. It's long. I'm old, so it's long and not so pretty at times. But it was serendipity that got me back into art as a way of getting through each day. My niece lived out in Seattle, and I went to visit my sister. And my niece had made these really cool earrings, cactus earrings, out of polymer clay. And this was back in late 80s. And I had never heard of polymer clay. And so I bought a starter set and went back to my house and played with it. And that grew itself into a business eventually called Winter Moon Designs, incorporating wholesale, retail craft shows, high-end craft shows, including the ACC craft show in Baltimore.
Pre-Etsy, I'm assuming.
Very pre-Etsy, practically dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also owned a store in Ellicott City,
Okay.
and that was American Craft and Fine Art.
Were you downtown on the main street there?
I was next to Tersegel's, which is
Oh,
the French
yeah.
restaurant there.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I probably
so-
went into your shop at some point. I
It
didn't
could
grow up
be.
here, but I've been to Ellicott City a couple times and probably never even knew it.
I did it for 7 years, and it was, when was that? 93 to, it was 2003 was when I stopped
Okay.
doing that.
So I may have gone into your shop and
Okay.
had no idea. We may
Well,
have met in a past life.
That is entirely
don't know.
possible in more ways than one.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next step was that I got tired of polymer clay because it's basically, most people consider it a craft material, and I was doing art with it. It wasn't, as Rodney Dangerfield, there I'm dating myself again, said, I don't get no respect.
Yeah.
That was kind of the way I felt. So I decided to change it up a little bit, and me being me, decided to do something off the wall, like take a metal fabrication class where I learned how to weld.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I fell in love with it. And so the following year, I gave up my business downtown Ellicott City, it being a little flammable down there. And moved my studio out to Carroll County
Okay.
and created life-size animals, a life-size bear, life-size giraffe, actually 1.5 life-size giraffes, a kangaroo, a muskox, what else? Oh, a great blue heron. Yeah, so that was my life for a while.
Now, I'm going to assume something that's life-size like that has a very specific installation place.
Yes.
You can't just like throw that in your front yard or in your living room or
Well, I
even
can't.
on a college campus. I guess you could, but
Oh yeah.
I
Where-
was hoping we could bring it into the gallery, the big giraffe.
Yeah.
And I was like,
We
we can
might
do
have
it.
too much
Virginia,
short
we can do it.
ceilings.
You know,
can do
we
it.
could. I would love to bring. Actually, maybe not the whole giraffe, but I do have the giraffe that's the head and the neck that's coming out of the window in my shed and eating out of the garden.
okay. So are they on display anywhere? Are there any
They're-
museums or galleries or any businesses that have those on display?
The Great Blue Heron is at Piney Run Park
Okay.
in Carroll
Yep.
County, and I actually had it installed in the water on a piling, so it's taking off into the lake. That was actually commissioned by the Carroll County Arts Council
yeah.
and the Park and Recs department. So
That's really cool.
yeah, the others are on my property, and you can always give me a ring and see if you can come by and see them.
I think a field
Road
trip,
trip.
for one of the ceramics classes
Absolutely.
is in. We'll have to talk to Chaz.
Yeah, because
and
you can
have him
do
get out
that and then come see the studio and I give a little tour and
That's
stuff.
even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think getting
yeah.
the students out. I don't know if we've done a lot of that to go visit like personal studios. Like Bill Van Wilder has up on, not on Braddock Heights, but over on South Mountain, he has his studio. He's a famous potter. Does a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So, all right. So,
Okay, so
you did that.
I did
Now,
that. Then
How did you go from that to more soft, fuzzy, colorful?
Because
I
Virginia
I don't
said we
want to. I
couldn't
don't
bring
want
the
to call it.
giraffe.
I don't want to call it yarn. I was trying to figure
Fiber.
out all yesterday. Trying to figure out like, is it yarn? Is it fabric? Is it a textile? Is it all three? Is it neither?
you can call it fiber.
Fiber. Okay,
Fiber
that's a good
art.
word for it.
Yeah, because that incorporates all of the above. So yeah, fiber isn't
Okay.
so bad. I had never lost my love for the fiber. I had done some weaving with the polymer clay, and then when I learned how to weld, I started creating some basket forms with the steel and wove them with yarn. Again, my mom, you talked about inspiration. She's huge. She would, when I was real little, she did some knitting and some crocheting. So there was yarn there. And then she had a stroke when she was 49.
I'm sorry.
And it made her paralyzed on one side. So she continued to create her own massive tapestries. And we're talking like medieval kinds of tapestries, complete with the hats women wore with the scarf coming out the back and stuff. And she would create them and produce them one-handed, needlepoint. Yeah. So yarn was like always around in
Okay.
my life. And then I get bored easily, obviously, because I jumped from polymer clay to steel, and now
You're all over the place.
I am all over
But
the
that's
place.
okay. I mean,
It's all about the material for me.
Yeah.
It's all about exploring that material, making it do something that it's not supposed to do or that nobody has done. I mean, steel for me was not just about the strength, but it was about the flexibility, the fluidity of it. Mostly steel you see is done by, I hate to say it, men who, like the strength of it, and do I-beam stuff. And for me, it was more about how can I make steel look like it has movement or look like it is going into the ground and coming back out of the ground.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about the material and how can I make it express what I'm feeling inside or the movement that I'm feeling. So yarn was part of it, but I seem to be talking about my mother a lot.
that's okay. I'm sure
um,
she's very happy.
She might be. Maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to tell. She's a very shy woman. She also, because she had little pieces of yarn, she had a cigar box that said, little pieces of string too small to do anything with. So I started.
We talked about that. My
Yeah.
aunt had the same
Well, that's
box.
that's just
Yeah.
an invitation to go, really?
Yeah.
I think I can do something with this. Don't
And-
tell me it's too small.
Well, yeah. Honest to God, she did when she died. It was still there, and there were still pieces of string in it. But so anyway, I kept pieces of yarn with that mentality in my head and draped them on a lamp. And it was then that the excitement over what the yarn was doing when it was all draped together. And I
Okay,
I
yeah.
used yarns that were not just like your typical cotton or wool yarn.
Yeah.
It's,
It's not just like a 3-strand or 5-strand woven,
Exactly.
like somebody would, do needlepoint or something like that with, or,
Exactly.
a quilt or something.
Yeah, there was for a while there. Novelty yarns were in, and so that's where you got the eyelash yarn that has a little fuzzy to it,
Right.
and, stuff
A little
like
bit
that.
of glitter in there.
Yes, exactly. So that's what started the yarn, and I wanted to do some installations, and so I had become a member at Noma Gallery, which is in Frederick
Yep.
on Fifth Street. On Market and Fifth, and I had signed up for March of 2020. You should figure out what the rest of this story is about. And I decided to do an installation with the yarn hanging down as a room, as something you could actually walk into, as something that you could experience on your, without talking or anything like that. And I put it in, and the opening day was the day after the first case of COVID in Maryland.
March 14th.
And so that kind of put the kibosh on installation work. And so this is really the first chance that I've had to expand that idea and to put it into the gallery. And when Bonnie asked if I could do something that would, fill the gallery, I was like, well, yeah. Oh, shoot. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I think we all
big
have those
space.
moments where like, oh yeah, I can do that. This is great. And then you think, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually had a lot of ideas, but the more I thought about it, the more the yarn needed to be in that room, and the more it needed to change the room.
And it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to give away what's there because I want people to go, and I'm going to do a horrible job of like describing it. But it's floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
There's different lengths.
Yeah.
It's not just a drape or like a curtain. It's got movement to it. You have different layers. You can actually walk through.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now let's get into that. And we talked a little bit before is, how do you want people to interact? Like, is there a right and wrong way to interact with this installation? But what is your vision? Like when somebody walks in and goes, okay, is there an expectation? Obviously you want them to kind of have some feel to it, but what do you, like if you were standing off in the corner, what would you want them to do?
That's a really good question. I've learned a long time ago that as an artist that when you make something, the minute you put it out into public, you sort of have to let go of it
Yep.
and of what you want people to think about it. However,
In a perfect world.
I think that the reactions that I have seen so far are the reactions that I was hoping would happen, which is sort of like they come in and they stop and they look around and they go, whoa. And that to me, is kind of like when I moved from polymer clay to steel and I did the giraffe. It's like with polymer clay, you don't get the wow factor. With a life-size steel giraffe, you sure as hell get a wow
Yeah,
factor, and there's a little bit of that. I have to say, it's my ego talking, but I like the wow factor
I
of
think
it.
we all do. Yeah.
In some respects,
in
yeah.
any kind of visual craft,
Yeah.
whether it's what you're doing, photography, video, painting, printmaking, sculpture,
Right.
you always have one of those pieces or a few that
Yeah.
have a little bit more of a visceral response, where
Yeah,
people connect to it.
I think you're right. And in fact, sometimes what bothers me more is when people walk by my stuff without even noticing it, which has happened. And that, like, I want to smack them on the head and say, well,
What
are
is
you
wrong
not
with you?
looking?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's part of it. But I want them, there's so much of this world right now that is set into a phone screen. And it's not visceral, it's not full body,
Yeah.
it has no smell, it has some sound, but that's controlled by, whatever speaker you have. It has no cool, it has no hot, it has no color, it has, that kind of thing. So to create something where, and I grew up this way. I mean, life was three-dimensional, so to create something that goes back to that or pulls it in again, where people have to stop, get off their screens and actually experience something, not only physically, but mentally, and to think about what the show is about is, I think, really important, and that's what I want to get from people.
And the installation process now was this built on site? Like, did you just come in and go, all right, I'm going to bring the hooks, I'm going to bring all the rods, and I'm going to bring everything and build it here? Or was it built off-site, like in your studio, and then you brought it over, or was it a little of both?
Yes.
Because I know,
This was a
reading some of
production.
Bonnie's posts, that it was a pretty labor-intensive installation.
Yes.
Very labored.
Yes.
That I would imagine the two of you kind of worked, long days, long hours.
I
getting everything right.
I didn't put the yarn work in. I helped Virginia on the installation a bit,
Right.
which we probably
Thank
needed
you.
a
Thank
couple
you, thank
helpers.
you.
Yes,
Thank
but
you.
she
Yeah.
she had a whole crew of willing participants helping tie the yarn on these long rods that she
Yeah.
brought in, and had to come up with her own way of packing it that didn't tangle everything by the
That
time
was
she
mine.
brought
Like,
it
how do
here.
you get that
Right.
here?
So it was
You know?
a big process. It was very
It
logistically engineering, an artistic, think outside the box, entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Were there a
Every
lot of
word.
Were there a lot of scissors involved?
Absolutely.
Do
Absolutely.
you now? And that's the question, though. Since you did cut stuff, do you now have a box, a little cigar box of your own?
Oh, honey, my
That-
cigar box is
Or
about
do you have-
Probably.
6 by 6 foot.
Yeah,
And
You've
creates
got
a-
full
of
circle.
things
You
that
can-
don't,
You can
too short
disappear.
to
You can
use.
step into my cigar box and disappear in there. Yes, I have a bunch. And I did one post where I was clipping off the bottom of the installation, and I had little pieces of yarn all across the floor. So
Too short
Yeah.
to do
I would
anything
say
short
with.
to do
too
anything.
short.
I still have them. They're in my studio. I did not throw them out.
So here's an odd question. It's just something, because you're going to have your gallery reception.
Yes.
Is there any thought to like bringing scraps and letting people take like some little scraps home with them to
That's-
like make their
that's a
own
good
little thing?
idea.
To say, if you like this, make your own little
Yeah.
thing.
That's a
that's it.
You
brilliant
can make
idea.
earrings
That is a
or a
good idea.
necklace or a bracelet
Or
or
just take it home
and say this
feel
was
it.
in Virginia Sperry's show.
Oh, that's neat.
And then like your
That's a
stuff
cool
is like
idea.
all
Yeah.
out in the
Yeah,
world.
I like that. And I could do it both with white and with the colorful yarn.
Right, because you
too.
there's very primary colors, but then
Mm-hmm.
you also have, and it's not pure white, it's more of like an off-white, almost like an ivory.
Well, there's some pure white in there, and
Okay,
then,
is it?
and,
Yeah.
but I didn't want it to be all pure white
Yeah.
for
And talk,
various
yeah,
reasons.
talk about the stuff that's behind. Like there's an opening that you can actually kind of
Yeah,
go through, and there's stuff on the wall.
yeah. I tend to make things more complicated than they need to be.
Just a
so
little bit.
what
So
can
is
I
it
say?
like I did this? This is not enough. I
Yeah.
need to do more.
Well, let's put it. I'm going to back up just a sec, because
Yeah.
there was a question that you had earlier about installation, and some of that comes from the fact that I actually sat in the gallery back in January and February and watched where people walked They come out
Yeah,
of the.
I kind of
they-
had a feeling you would do that.
Yeah, they come out of the doors. Students come out of the doors often on their phones with their backpacks on and beeline straight for the front door.
front door, yep.
And I thought, well, that's wrong. We have to do something about that. And then there was the fact that the gallery is incredibly symmetrical, and I really despise symmetry. So I said, well, we have to do something about that too. And then there was the 45-foot long wall, which is very horizontal, which I said, well, we have to do something about that too. So that all went into my designing of the show. And the show, at that point, I realized was going to be a ton of yarn. And so I went out and bought a ton of yarn and proceeded. And so to answer your question, a lot of it was strung at my studio.
Okay.
And then
I kind of had a feeling it was.
And then I brought it in. But when I was designing it, since I don't like symmetry, I don't like straight lines. So there was a curve in it, and I really, really Bonnie and I had talked about it being interactive in the way that people could actually walk through it, or there would be a portal of some sort that they could walk through. So I put that on the one side, and then because I'm me and I don't like to like sit with one thing, I created paper sculptures to go on a shelf inside, and those sort of were inspired by just my head. I did not say, oh, these are going to be such and such, but I just started playing in the studio and said, well, this is kind of cool. What can I do with this?
Yeah.
And it evolved into what it is now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think, like as a professor, convincing young students that they don't have to know everything right up front, to let things happen organically.
Yeah.
And to say, there's this creative process that you might know exactly what you want, but you have to let that creative process play out, because you're limiting yourself. You say, if this is exactly what I want, and you're going in knowing exactly what you want, then I think you're kind of ignoring a lot of other pathways.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I think that's always good for, especially I think like painters, people who draw ceramics, to kind of let that happen. But I think in a lesser extent still with photography.
Yeah, and I think that even came into play on the installation. When Virginia and I were in there that first day, it had to kind of play out and almost create itself and how it was working, because it didn't work at first how we thought it would. And then, there was tweaking and realizing how it played and morphed.
Right.
So it was very interesting. And that's what I tell students, and teaching the gallery management class come up, you have to be willing to let the show almost meld into itself and tell you what it's doing.
Right.
So it was really interesting, and being flexible in that, watching how it's interacting. So it was a fantastic installation process to really watch. If I had enough battery, I should have recorded an entire time lapse.
I was going to say that would have been
of
really
that.
cool, like time lapse.
Yeah.
Next time, let me know, and we'll throw up a video camera.
That was a
and
good
do
idea.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could do that for the deinstall. Always comes down faster than it went.
That's
gonna say,
true.
that's
Let's
just-
hope so. Gravity for one thing, but actually, the woman who was doing some photography that day got a video of me unfurling one of the panels of yarn. So
Oh,
that's kind of
was
cool.
that marketing or?
No, that was someone I know
Oh,
who I
okay.
had asked to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. All right. So one thing I want to get, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but I read your artist statement, and like I was saying, I think a lot of what you're saying on here is stuff that a lot of people not only need to say, but people need to hear or just understand.
Yeah.
That, your first sentence here, I am white.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
Right.
But you also kind of go into, there's, and I'm trying to figure out how to say it, there's a, what do I want to say? Not a guilt, but there's an understanding that people who were white in our history have done some pretty bad things. They've behaved pretty badly.
Mm-hmm.
And that as somebody who is white, it's not so much that you have to feel guilty for being white, but to understand that you might have a responsibility to say, yeah, what these people did was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for what they did. I'm not sorry that I'm white, but I'm going to do what I can do to make it better. And the one thing that you said in here, you say, my skin puts me on one side of the line and connects me directly to the people who caused this separation. And because I am connected with them, I must believe that I am causing this separation as well. This is an incredibly difficult concept, one that I hate, resist, and desperately want to ignore. I think I will struggle with it the rest of my life. I think a lot of people feel that way. And if we don't, there's something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. You know, something that I thought about. Like, I grew up, I had a ton of friends. I never grew up thinking, oh, I have a Korean friend whose name is John Murakami. I didn't grow up knowing I had a black friend whose name was Gilbert Wilson. I just grew up with friends. I never thought of it that way. I just wanted to go to my friend's house and ride bikes. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, that was, you know, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, at least for me, you know, I never had that understanding. And I kind of wish I did. You know, we learned about slavery in history class, and we learned about a lot of different things. But I never had, I guess, the forefront to go, man, you know, I'm really sorry for things that happened to people in your past and that was perpetrated by people of my color. They were just friends. And I think nowadays that's, I think, a little bit different because we're understanding. So talk about that a little bit more, and you know why that's in there, especially with the this critical race theory, and
Yes.
there's certain people being taken out of history books because of their color,
Yes.
and
The dreaded CRT. Well, this is such a complex topic.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to get into it too much, but too much.
With many different layers. I think for me, it's the show is not just about what white people have done, but it is also about what white people are still continuing to do. Mm-hmm. That and what I realize is that I am not responsible for what was done, even if I am related to people who did it. But I am responsible for what is being done,
yes.
And I am responsible for trying to change that. I am not the kind of person who will go into a nonprofit organization and, or into the halls of Congress and pound on tables and say, change this, change this.
Yeah.
What I, as an artist, can do, though, is to create a different venue. I think words, I was just talking about this with someone who was in the gallery earlier. The English language is not prepared with the right words to talk about racism. It was not developed with those words. And because people use words in a very, very conscious, manipulative way, especially these days, they can be twisted, they can be changed, they can be used to hurt, to punish, whatever. So what I'm trying to do with my installation is to bring the subject out in a way that cannot, well, it probably still could, but that is more direct, is more visceral, is more nonverbal, so that people can access the emotions of it without getting caught in the whole didactic, go down a whatever road, CRT, all of that, So the other thing that I feel is that I can show pieces of history. I can show in my art, I can show slavery, I can show redlining, I can show education. All of those things were used to separate the two races based on skin color. And by the way, I am very aware that this whole conversation could be opened up to, people of color and even globally, because I had a
Oh, of
conversation with someone who's from the Congo, and it all worked for her as well. So, but for the purposes of this installation, it's about black and white. And so I can show those in my installation, but I can also nudge people to start thinking about how is that still going on? Because yes, redlining was something that the federal government did back in the 30s through the 50s, 60s. It was finally
Right. Home loans, value
Yes.
of houses, where we are placing
well,
people.
it was even more than that.
Yeah.
It was they actually took maps, and it happened here in Frederick as well.
Yeah.
They took maps and took a red pen and put outlines around the areas of land that were not as nice, and that's where people of color were allowed, quote unquote, allowed to, as you say, get home loans to get a home, that kind of thing. But it still happens today. So it's just not legal, and they have gone underground to do it. But talk to the Johns Hopkins professor who recently had to whitewash his house in order to get an appraisal value that was $250,000 more than it was when he
Yeah,
did
because he
not.
probably had family photos up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I read that story.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that is not a one case scenario. So I don't want to get on a soapbox. I could do
No,
that all
it's-
day.
yeah.
But my point is that this is not necessarily an installation about mea culpa. This is an installation about this is happening now. This is who I am. It really is a self-portrait in a way. So the pieces that are, if you go inside the one wall, those are all about individual identity. How can I show that I am very much trying to see each black person as an individual with an individual identity and not someone who has black skin?
Right. I think that's how we should treat everybody. You're
well-
an individual. You can be good or bad
Theoretically,
just on who you are.
yes.
It has nothing to do with skin color or, anything else.
We humans have a tendency to judge, and judge quickly.
Yes.
And one thing that I want to go back to, one thing that you said earlier, which you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and how how you felt about your friends. They were just your friends. But what happens, and this is something that I have been quite aware of, is that even if someone is not saying, oh, that person is bad, you are taking it in on a societal level by what films you're watching, what ads you're watching on TV, who's playing ball, who's doing this, who's in charge of whatever, who's the principal in your high school. So there are so many under the surface messages that
Subliminal, yeah.
that everybody gets.
No, I totally agree.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
I agree with that.
so that's what this is about, and as I say, it's a self-portrait, so it's really about my exploration. But I would be really surprised if nobody could relate to what I'm going through. So
But yeah, like I said, I've been through there a couple times, and I've been through there with students, and every student I've walked in with has had a different response.
Right.
The way that they kind of take it all in visually.
Yes.
And I think, I think that's really cool.
And I don't discount the fact of someone walking in there and just taking it in physically and visually and all of that and not getting deeper into the meaning of it, because it's a very cool installation, I have to say. And in regards to your question about is there a way that people should take it in, I don't have beyond don't bring it down on top of you, please.
Please don't pull it down.
Don't tug real hard, but yes, you can touch it. You can go in. When I had it up at NOMA, I had a friend who was inside the room, and she stuck her hand through the wall of yarn, and somebody on the outside shook her hand. So there's,
I was waiting for you to say somebody screamed.
Oh, no, nobody screamed, but so there are so many ways that you can relate to it just on a body level. I would love to see somebody create a dance around it, to choreograph a dance, and
See, now we're talking about melding
yes,
artistic stuff. That
Absolutely.
would be really. Hood's got a theater program. They have a
Right.
dance troupe.
Right.
I wonder if it's
so there you go.
talking
That
to
would be
somebody
a great
there who would
idea,
just like
yeah.
kind of do some kind of like impromptu dance around
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Ooh, that could be fun.
And I also, one of the main questions that people ask me when they see this ton of yarn is, what are you going to do with it when you're done?
That was going to be one of my last questions is like, what do you do with it then?
Yeah, well, when I am done with it, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Because I have plans for this. I was even thinking, in terms of video, the white yarn might actually make a really cool, interesting screen, and to throw up images on that would be pretty damn powerful. Or throw
Making
it,
me like really think, yeah.
yeah, or have a portal in that side and throw them up on the wall, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, and since it is site specific, I could also take it pretty much anywhere.
I was going to
and,
say, there's plenty of
know,
places I could
morph
see
it.
taking it to. A lot of the breweries downtown have huge spaces. They have super high ceilings.
Mhm.
So I could see, putting something down, at one of the places down there. So
Oh,
they have these huge,
yeah.
huge spaces.
Yeah, I'm thinking Hirshhorn, but that's all right. That's just me.
That's my favorite. No, that would fit in very well, I think, down there.
A friend of mine calls this my woolly mammoth. So perhaps after it's all done, I will make an actual woolly mammoth out of it. And
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's, it's unfamiliar is the title, right?
unfamiliar territory
Unfamiliar territory is the
title.
title.
Yes.
And I'm going to go to Bonnie. And the show is up. Let's talk about how long it's going to be up and when the reception is.
The reception is next weekend on August 27th, 4 to 6.
So August
So-
27th, 4 to 6.
4 to 6, and we'll have greet everybody, and it'll be fantastic to see how everybody interacts
Yeah.
with the installation. And Virginia's going to do an artist talk at 5.
Okay.
So 5 o'clock, she'll do an artist talk and go into all of her avenues of creation, making, installation, and theory behind her work.
Yeah.
So
I'll make
it's-
sure that I put that on the morning announcements, that this is up for this week and
Thank
then next weekend.
Yeah,
Because there's not a lot going on this
The
first
first
week. I think they do that on purpose because they don't want to like flood the students.
Yeah, and it's open until September 9th.
Okay.
So it'll
We'll
be
do
up
that on
until
Monday.
then.
I'll make sure that we plug it. We do a show every Monday morning in my podcasting class called The Morning Announcement. And it's things that are happening around campus, things that are happening in downtown Frederick. I actually think we plugged your NOMA show last semester.
Oh, cool.
I'm pretty sure we did.
I'm
pretty sure I did.
Yeah, missing pieces.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
So we plugged
nice.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So
thought
this
this would be a great back to school show where we have that lull in the first week. Everybody's getting acclimated and they're coming in. Like yesterday I was in my office and it was just student after student walking by, finding where their classes are, peeking their head in and saying, "Oh my gosh, I love the gallery installation downstairs."
Yeah.
So it's a great
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of students in
intro.
there today as well. Later this afternoon at
Right.
4, we have first year conversations. So I know that there's at least 3 groups that are going to come through. So my group has 14, Beth has 14, and I don't know who else is in there. But there's going to be a bunch of people coming through
Wow.
today. And they're all
Cool.
freshmen.
Okay. So the other thing that people should know is that, yes, you can take photos of the exhibit. Yes, you can post it on social media. Just
Good.
tag both Hood College Galleries and V. Sperry Studio. So that
V. Sperry?
V. Sperry, as in Virginia
Okay,
Sperry.
V. Sperry
Studios.
Okay. We'll make sure we put that
Studio.
on.
I think one studio, not 2. And taking selfies, as Bonnie said, she gave me this idea. Taking a selfie is a really good way of saying, "Here I am at Hood College. Look what they do." So, because it's so vibrant and so cool. So.
And it'll be interesting to see what students chooses the bright
white,
colored
yeah.
background,
Yeah.
or are they gonna,
ivory white.
meld over to the ivory white side
Right.
for their backdrop.
I will mention that today to say, hey,
Back to school pics.
Yeah.
take some photos, do some selfies, post it, and
Yeah.
see what kind of response we get from that.
Yeah. Totally.
Super cool. Thank you for being on In Focus,
You're
our first
welcome.
one for fall.
You're
Yay.
welcome.
And we'll see you on the
27th.
27th between
Mhm.
4 and 6.
And if you want to find me other times, the website is actually my name. It's really easy, virginiasperry.com. So Yeah.
That's what it should be.
Yes.
There you can see the giraffe. You can
Yes.
see
Oh, is it
the
on there?
welding.
Okay, good.
It's on my website. Yes.
Yeah, because I think, is there a photo that I can download? Like maybe we can like do a little picture-in-picture.
Sure.
Yeah, I can do a
Sure.
little postage stamp or something.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
put some
There's
stuff up.
there's plenty of photos of all the different variety of media that I work in. So
Fantastic.
yeah, everything's on there.
Yeah, I think and the website's an inspiration to just making,
Yeah.
making things. And when I saw her have the welding, all the metal, because I'm an industrial photographer, seeing all that hardscape metal inspires people to go home and learn how to do this craft that isn't necessarily a women-run craft. So just inspiration in that realm. And then she went to the softscape. So that was one of the reasons why I was like, oh my gosh, I love your work. Please come in.
Yeah.
Such a versatile. We couldn't bring the giraffe in this show.
We'll do it
Maybe
another
we can
time.
have a future welding.
Well, I mean, it could be something where we could do. I mean, I'm assuming that they're weather resistant, weatherproof. Like maybe we could do something on the quad,
yeah.
light them up.
It depends. I mean, the giraffe it would be about $1,000 to move. So
well.
that's a tough
We're
one.
limited on our budget.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps you could borrow the bear, which can fit in the
The
back
bear.
seat of my vehicle. So that's.
That would be fun.
Well, we'll talk.
We will
talk. We'll
I
have
think
lunch.
there's lots yeah. Well, thank you again.
You're
I very
welcome.
much
Thank you,
appreciate you
Tom.
being here.
Thank you
All
for having
right.
us, Tim.
Okay.
And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.